Hi, I'm Michael Woods, Chief Scientist at the Asian Turfgrass Center, and in this ATC Doublecut, I'm going to summarize a 2.5 hour conversation. And actually, that's a little bit hard to do, but when Chris Trittabaugh and I had our ATC office hours live stream, I didn't really intend that it would be a 2.5 hour conversation, but it turns out it led to that because we talked about a lot of things that were interesting for both of us related to total organic matter testing, OM246, and especially how that's related to playability. And we had a lot of questions from the people who joined us in the live stream, some comments and questions, and that led to further discussion, and somehow we ended up talking for 2.5 hours. So by request, for people who English is not their first language, they might struggle to get through a 2.5 hour conversation and really understand the nuance of it. So it was requested that I could I summarize it in writing, which makes it easier to understand, perhaps to read a short summary, or it's of course possible to use Google Translate or a service like that to also get the gist of a conversation. So actually in this blog post, which I'll put a direct link to in the description, I actually posted the auto-generated transcript. So the transcript that YouTube generates, I put that in the blog post, so you can download the entire transcript if you want to and do whatever you like with it. But if you want to read what we talked about and read that in a foreign language, you can have that translated. But anyway, so what did we talk about? Well, the idea was that we were going to be talking about OM246 and specifically reviewing the OM246 report for Hazeltine National Golf Club for samples that were collected in October of 2021. And OM246 is a hashtag that Chris came up with, actually. And this is the measurement of total organic matter, total organic material, because sometimes I say the word total organic material rather than total organic matter, because the OM246 test, we're not screening out anything. It includes all the undecomposed living and dead plant material. When we're talking about soil organic matter by definition is passed through a sieve, through a 2 millimeter sieve. And so any roots, any thatch, any undecomposed living or dead plant material gets screened out and it's not tested. What's measured as part of soil organic matter is really the humus, the humic material in the soil. And I think for calibrating sand top dressing, to find out if you're putting enough sand top dressing or not enough sand top dressing, and to find out where in the profile by depth you would ideally need to be putting a certain amount of sand, that's where I think the OM246 can be so effective. And so what we did in our office hours discussion that went on for 2.5 hours is we talked about that. We talked about the different sections on the report, what the charts were showing, and then we ended up talking a lot about playability, because the OM246 tests are not done just to find out what the organic matter content is, the organic material content is. What we're really doing that for is trying to optimize the playing surfaces with a minimum amount of disruption, and to make sure that we're doing all of the disruption that's necessary. By disruption, I mean pulling cores, punching holes, spreading sand, verticutting, scarifying, anything that would disrupt the surface, but that's been being done for the purpose of managing the organic material at really the surface of the root zone. And So Chris talked about how he uses the stimp meter to assess how the ball rolls, how this year he started using the bobble test, which is a way to put a number to how smooth and true the ball rolls. And we talked about how an awareness of exactly what the organic matter content is at the surface allows him to safely skip some of the top dressing that he would have done in the past, skip some of the hole punching that he would have done in the past, and provide more days of excellent putting conditions for the membership. And this is something that I think is difficult to implement without some data behind it, because we would always be afraid, especially if the greens are healthy, and growing, and you know that they're producing organic matter. And so the question is, how much sand, how much coring, how much removal, how much sand replacement needs to be done in order to manage the organic matter at the surface, to keep the organic matter from accumulating to a level that's too high. And we talked about what we used to recommend. I used to recommend 3, 4, 5 times as much sand as I do now. And Chris used to do, I think, more than he does now. And the beauty of this testing, for me, the real, what have I called it? In the past, I've called it the killer feature of this testing, is the ability to find out what the organic matter accumulation rate is at your site, and then make a very site-specific recommendation for how much sand needs to be applied and where that sand needs to go. And it turns out that at Hazeltine, from October of 2020 to October of 2021, the organic matter didn't change. It was at 4.9% in the top 2 centimeters in 2020, and it was at 4.9% in October of 2021. So with that type of consistent organic matter content, Chris then knows that the work that he did in the time period from October 2020 to October 2021, the amount of work that he did for creating the growth rate and for applying sand and doing a dry eject and any other work that he did to manage that organic matter, combined with the natural production of organic matter and the natural decomposition of organic matter, it was just enough to keep the organic matter consistent. So he doesn't have to worry that something is happening that he doesn't see. He doesn't have to worry that the organic matter is accumulating in the root zone, but he's not seeing it, and that he needs to do more preventative maintenance. Instead, he can proceed with confidence, knowing that the organic matter stayed consistent with the work that he did. So that's really what we ended up talking about for 2.5 hours, if I remember right. I did appreciate that Chris gave the suggestion to listen to this or to watch it at increased speed. If you watch it at 1.5 or you can, I think you can go up to 2x speed if you want to, but I find 1.5 works pretty good to get through something faster and still be able to make sense of it. Of course, that works great if you're a native English speaker. You can just blast through these and you can get through that conversation pretty quick. But if you're not a native English speaker, then a 2.5 hour conversation is pretty daunting and not very useful. And so I tried to summarize it in that blog post, where it's something that's about OM246, but we very quickly started talking about playability and optimizing the playability. And that's something that I'm going to be working on some more, and I'm sure I'll have more blog posts coming up about that, so we can talk about that again in another ATC Doublecut. Thanks for your time today, and thanks for listening, and I'll talk with you next time. Thank you.